Hi guys! So I've had huge requests over on my Instagram page about what I have done specifically to get my cycle back as a breastfeeding mum, as a co-sleeping mum, and generally as an attachment parent. So you will all be delighted to hear that we are still breastfeeding. We haven't reduced our feeds much at all. We certainly are not heading towards weaning or anything anytime soon. And here are my kind of top tips for the things that I did to encourage my cycle to return. And honestly, within 2 months of implementing these things, my cycle returned. So there definitely is something in it, and you'll be glad to know that I didn't have to stop breastfeeding in order for my cycle to return, and it is very much possible to become pregnant if that's what you're looking to do when you are breastfeeding. So I'm going to get quickly into the different things that I did. I suppose the first thing, and I talked about this a little bit more on my Instagram stories, and I might create a YouTube video about it, who knows, but this is about the possibility of becoming pregnant when you're breastfeeding and knowing what is normal. So I think a lot of people don't realize, but if you are breastfeeding mum, it's very normal for your period to return anywhere typically between the 9-month and 18-month postpartum. So that is a huge window. And I think if you are either at the beginning of that or the latter of that, it's still normal. So give yourself a little bit of grace. There is no rush. The only reason that I am looking to have pregnancies closer in with a smaller age gap, smaller distance, is because my sister and I are exactly a year and 2 months apart. And she's my best friend. So I really, really wanted that. As well as that, my husband is a good bit older than me, so that was something that was definitely in my mind, that I want him to be able to run around after our kids. I don't want him to be sitting in the chair watching them. I want him to be up and about with them, so that's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to get my cycle back that little bit sooner rather than later. So for me, I was exactly 14 months postpartum, which meant I ended that period in, oh gosh, like over 2 years anyway. So it's strange. It's been really strange, but also kind of wonderful. I feel much more like in my body and much more myself, which is really, really nice. But I suppose the first tip would be knowing what's normal, and not to be putting so much pressure on yourself in that department, because stress certainly doesn't help. I actually wrote down the little things that I did because I wanted to kind of track them and see what was actually working and what wasn't working. So the first thing, I suppose, is knowing that you don't necessarily have to give up breastfeeding at all. You don't have to wean your baby to be able to get your cycle back. It's very, very unusual for women to have to fully wean in order to ovulate. So it is possible that that's going to be you, but not necessarily the way that it's going to have to be. So for us, it's really important that I did full-term nursing. I did not want to wean Atticus if I could help it. So for us, I aimed for a 6-hour gap in between nursing sessions for as often as I could. So for me, it was about, if I could get a 6-hour gap in any one day, that would be enough for me to trigger ovulation. So as somebody who generally parents through breastfeeding, that was a very easy one for me to do, because I would make sure that I was make sure that I was doing other measures. So if Atticus was upset, that I would console him by holding him and snuggling him and talking to him and rocking him instead of going straight to the boob. So that was a really nice one. As well as that, the research tells us that it's actually the cumulative time suckling at the breast per 24 hours as opposed to the time. So it's not necessarily, dropping your night feeds or dropping your morning feeds that's going to trigger ovulation. It's more so the amount of time spent at the breast overall in 24 hours. So like I said, for us, we aimed for a 6-hour gap. So for me, I found that the morning time is the easiest time to drop. So in that, Daddy would take him off for a walk, we would sit down and have breakfast together, then we would read stories, and before we knew it, 6 hours had gone. So that was a really nice one. As well as that, it kind of came around the time that Atticus is really enjoying solid foods now, whereas before that, we've always done baby-led weaning, so he was kind of trying stuff and enjoying stuff, but taking little tasters and then always going back to the breast afterwards. Totally normal. It's honestly, I always love that phrase, food before one is just for fun. So it's sensory input, it's, tastes, it's about enjoying it and playing with food, as opposed to it being his sole source of nutrition. Breast milk was always going to be where the majority of his calories came from. So that was the first thing. So trying to aim for that 6-hour nursing gap. The next one was sleep. And I think a lot of us don't realize how important sleep is for our hormones and our hormonal balance. So it goes without saying, Atticus still wakes several times a night, but I was putting off going to bed earlier because I wanted time as an adult with my husband and trying to have time to kind of get my adult time in, but not realizing how important it was for me. So I actually started to set an alarm. I started to really clock into my own circadian rhythm. So we got full blackout curtains. I turned on the you can actually download an app that turns off the blue light on your phone after a certain hour. So I turned mine off after 9 p.m. and I was generally aiming for bed by 10 p.m, which is completely reasonable. Still waking throughout the night. We're still co-sleeping. We're still breastfeeding. We're still doing all of that stuff. So none of that changed. So that was the first thing, which is sleep. Where possible, then I would get my husband to take Atticus off for the first hour, so I got an hour of really good quality sleep, so really deep sleep. The next thing was nutrition and calories. So while it's certainly cut down, breastfeeding can burn up to 500, even 600 calories in the early days, but it is still burning calories. Your body's still working hard to create breast milk for your baby, even when your baby's a bit older. So for me, I've always been very focused on my nutrition, but certainly postpartum, I haven't been as focused on it as I could have been. So this is something I zoned in on, and I also zoned in on my calories. So I was getting really good quality, calorie dense food. So I was eating a lot of nut butters and seed butters and more avocados and really high quality fatty foods, because fats are really important when it comes to the composition of hormones in our body. So that was one of the things that I did, and maybe eating a little bit more than I had been before. So I was maybe before thinking a little bit more about, making sure I was eating, lots of fresh fruit and vegetables. And while that's really important, I wasn't focusing in on eating enough carbohydrates, eating enough good quality fatty acids. I have always been supplementing, so I'm going to do a separate video kind of on the different supplementation that I've been doing as a vegan mum, a vegan breastfeeding mum, but none of that has actually changed. That's all old stuff. The next thing was, as a lactation consultant, and when we're talking about milk supply, you talk about keeping your baby close. And the reason for that is because of the hormones that are released in mum, which can actually, basically your body reacts in direct response to keeping your baby close. So that's something that I was very wary of in terms of doing the opposite, which was not reducing my supply, but trying to trick my body back into thinking when it's ready, that it's ready to provide for another baby. So for me, if that was going out for a walk, I would either get my husband to do baby wearing with Atticus or put him into the buggy, which is not something that we generally would have done. I would have worn Atticus absolutely everywhere, and that actually comes in quite nice timing in the fact that he's getting really, really big and heavy now. He's always been a chunky baby, he's always been a chunky boy, but my back would never have been super, so it's kind of worked quite nicely for me in terms of timing. He's also now walking, so that's fantastic, and he almost wants to walk everywhere. The next thing that I did was reduce my coffee intake. So this isn't necessarily going to be something you have to do, but for me, I was drinking way too much coffee. I was drinking 3 and 4 cups a day, and I'm very sensitive to caffeine, and the reason that I know that is because a day where I didn't have caffeine, say first thing in the morning, I would automatically be getting headaches and feeling I feel like poop if I didn't get a cup of coffee, and that shows to me that my body had become reliant on it and my adrenals were becoming a little bit fatigued. So what I did actually instead was looked towards reducing my caffeine intake overall. So I'm now only drinking 1 cup I have like a double espresso Americano first thing in the morning, and I really look forward to that, and I really enjoy it. But I've also supplemented in medicinal mushroom coffees, so they are lower in caffeine but also have the benefit of balancing out your adrenals and are really, really beneficial. The ones that I've been using are the ones from Four Sigmatic, which I'm not sponsored in any way, shape, or form to say. I just really enjoy them. And the combination that I have is the one with the shaga and cordyceps in it. So I found that amazingly beneficial. Just my last point is kind of in line with supplementation, is I got a full blood screening done. So at my local GP's office, I went in with a list. I wanted to look at my thyroid function, how my body was processing glucose. I wanted to look at my iron levels. I wanted to look at my vitamin D levels. So in that, your baby is very much taking from all of your vitamin and mineral stores in your breastfeeding, which is absolutely amazing because it just shows us how incredible our bodies are in terms of protecting and nourishing our babies. But I found that I was actually very low in iron, and I was also not taking enough vitamin D, which is surprising to me because I would generally take more than the recommended allowance, but it just goes to show how much of it was actually going to my baby. So I rectified all of that and started improving in the qualities. I would take a vegan iron supplement every 2 days with vitamin C to aid the absorption, as well as increasing my vitamin D intake, and it came back sooner rather than later. So they are all my little tips. I also have created a full hypnobirthing course and a preparing to breastfeed course for any of those of you who are already pregnant and are looking to have a lovely, positive, gentle birth and breastfeeding journey. So I will link my website down below, and please go and check those out. But I hope to be uploading on here a little bit more often than I have been before. So make sure you subscribe, hit that little notification bell, and check in with me on my next video because I'm going to have loads more information to come.